Hi guys, and welcome to Dan's Haunted House. Today I'm in Devon and I'm at the 11th century Chambercombe Manor. Now this house behind me, you can only just about see the roof, but we'll see more of it as I go in. But this property behind me is reputedly one of the most, if not the most, haunted spots in England. And there are lots of different stories associated with it, but we'll get more into that later. But suffice to say, there is a room in here that was discovered, I believe, in the 18th century. And inside the room, there was a bed. It was a hidden room. And in the bed, there was a skeleton of a young lady. But more about her a little bit later. There are also said to be the spirits of children that roam this property. I think they're in the upstairs of the property, amongst several other spirits or disenfranchised entities. So we're going to go in here today, we're going to have a little look around, and we're going to see what Chambercombe Manor has to offer us in the way of the paranormal. Let's go inside, guys. So I've just been talking to the guy, or the old chap very nice man, in the gift shop. I think he's from Northumberland. And he was telling me that as you go into the house, apparently lots of problems with people taking photographs. It just doesn't work. But he was telling me that one lady went in there and she was complaining that she couldn't take any photos with her camera. I asked her if she left the lens on, but no, that wasn't it. And she came out and she moved 6 feet away from the house. Then she tried to take one photo of the outside of the property, and it went off like a machine gun. It was just banging out photo after photo to the number of 72, I believe. But there's a picture apparently as you go in, and people have tried to take photos of it and they just can't. A lot of them, the camera doesn't seem to work. So we'll see what we can see about that. So here we are, guys. We're walking into Chambercombe Manor now. Noise obviously doing work in the background there. I'm sorry about that. But this is featured on a lot of paranormal programs. But you know my feelings about paranormal TV, and it's not favourable. But yeah, here we are at Chambercombe Manor, 11th century manor house, here in Ilfracombe, Devon. Hi guys, we're in the cafe at the moment of Chambercombe Manor, and what I'm going to do, I'm not that au fait with this property, so I'm going to read off some of the ghostly experiences that have happened here, and we'll go through them. That room was discovered, the hidden room, the skeleton on the bed of the young lady, was discovered in 1738, and that's Fox in the background. Unfortunately, he's going on about his drink. But some of the experiences that have happened here, and she plays a major factor in the haunting of this property. So ghostly experience number one is in the corridor alongside the hidden room, visitors have been barred or pushed by 3 spirit men. One is uniformed whilst the others are thought to be smugglers. Well, there you go, that's one of them. And let's have a look. Another one is there's a bed in there, and apparently in this bed an ill woman has been seen on this bed, watched over by a doting male. Attempts to reach onto the bed cause unexplained disturbances, such as the clock door swinging open or a curtain ring spinning on the pole. Now we're going to see what others we got here. I'm not going to go into it too much because I'm going to hopefully try and get a little bit of an interview with one of the resident paranormal team that's here, and see if she can tell me a little bit more. I've been told she's called Leslie, so we'll see. Another ghostly experience, the clockwork meat spit has often turned without being wound up. This is thought to be caused by a spirit boy who sits above the bread ovens. There you go, interesting. And another ghostly experience is of a boy aged 10, visiting with his mother, was very interested in the chapel with a strong scent of incense about him. It is thought he had been a priest in an earlier life. Interesting. So yeah, so there's lots and lots of activity that's been experienced, and lots of different ghost stories associated with this building. And as I say, it's reputedly one of the most haunted buildings, if not the most haunted building in England. And yeah, we're going to go into that, and we're going to see a little bit more, and we're going to go on a bit of a tour with some of one or maybe two of the resident paranormal team. And hopefully I'll get a bit of an interview, as I say, with a lady called Leslie. We'll see. Speak to you in a bit, guys.
but it obviously fell out of favour much later on and became a farm. So we don't actually know the age of the house itself, but we know that it was here in 1086. It's listed in the Domesday Book, and back then it was an estate of about 30 acres owned by a man called Aylmer. Lots of farm animals, mainly sheep, 5 slaves, and the entire value was given as £4, would you believe? The most pocket money prices. After that, a bit of a gap till 1162, when the house was owned by Robert Fitzroy, Baron of Oakhampton, one of the sons of King Henry I, and he gave the estate to a French family called Chambercombe, who'd come over with the Norman invasion. They'd been of service to the crown, and they were given this estate, very nice too, and they were here a very long time. The Chambercombes gave the estate its name. Chambercombe Valley, or Chambercombe, as they say in Devon, became Chambercombe over the years. And it wasn't until the early 1500s their line finally died out, and the estate passed to relatives by marriage called the Greys, another royal connection. Sir Henry Grey was 2nd Earl of Suffolk, and he was married to the niece of King Henry VIII, Lady Frances Brandon. They were the parents of Lady Jane Grey, who we call the 9 Days Queen. Some people call her Queen Jane. She was entitled to the throne, and she was on the throne 9 days. Sadly, though, there was a lot of competition for the throne at the time, and she was sent to the block when she was still only 16 in 1554, poor girl. Her husband went to the block the same day, and shortly afterwards her father, Sir Henry Grey, went to the block himself for his part in Wyatt's rebellion, and at that point the family, of course, completely fell out of favour, and all their estates reverted to the crown. This wasn't the Greys' main estate. That's called Bradgate Park. It's in Leicestershire, and it's in ruins today. This is believed probably to have been a hunting lodge at the time, which is very easy to imagine, actually. Back in those days, this would have been a densely forested hidden valley, lots of game in the forest, lots of water sources down here. And Lady Jane Grey is said to have slept in this house. There is a room upstairs, a bedroom that she's said to have slept in, which we'll see later on. After the Greys fell out of favour, the estate fell out of favour too, and it lost all its importance, becoming very run down over the years. And finally, in the early 1600s, it was given to the local church by the Crown. The church sold a lot of land off, and it was at this point that Chambercombe Manor became Chambercombe Manor Farm. And it was a working farm from then on, right up until 1972, when it was bought by the last owner, who was a dentist from London, called Arthur Roberts, who apparently bought this estate and a very lovely Buzzacott estate in Combe Martin, all on the proceeds of his dental practice. Very nice too. Arthur died a few years ago, and today we're a charitable trust, an impoverished and struggling one, it has to be said, but we do keep going. Are you the last ones? No. Oh, okay. I'll just wait until everybody joins us. This way. Sorry. Are you the last ones? Yes. Yes. It's named after furniture. We have a Chippendale chest on chest and a Chippendale bed. On the left of the bed, a William and Mary chest on stand, dated about 1690, made of yew. It's a stunning piece, and that's one of the original pieces of the house. The bed, sadly, is not complete. It seems a shame, but somebody seems to have sawn the top off to fit it into the room. So it's not complete, and they've taken away the rope base as well. You've probably seen old beds with the rope threaded across through holes in the frame to support the standard straw mattress. And that's why you've got the brass escutcheons on the bottom. People ask about these. There's a mechanism in the posts with these pins so that whenever necessary, you'd use something like a crank handle to tighten up your bed ropes. And that gives us the well-known phrase, good night, sleep tight. And don't let the bedbugs fight. People had all kinds of parasites at one time, fleas, lice, bedbugs, worms, all kinds of things. Just part of life. In the 1700s, sometimes, yes, that's one thing. Also, people sometimes feel very wobbly in here, as if they're seasick. I've seen people swaying. We even had one lady that lost the use of her legs in this room. And it also happens in the next room too, but we have no idea why. It's just one of the very strange things in this very strange old house. Now this room is associated with children, especially 2 little girls, and one little girl in particular. Her name's Ailey, she's about 9 years old, and she lived here with her aunt in Victorian times. She died here in this bed of TB or consumption. The other little girl's called Bella. We don't see so much of her, but the 2 of them have been seen together from time to time. Mostly though, Ailey shows up on her own, and these days she seems to be our most common sighting. She's seen here in this room. This was her bedroom. She's also seen from outside looking out of the window here, and you can see her, if you're lucky, all over the place out in the grounds doing all kinds of different things. We find it interesting that she so often appears to complete skeptics, and they assume we've got people wandering around here in period dress, which of course we don't. When Ailey's around, there's a particular smell which is hers. It's a floral perfume, a bit old-fashioned, slightly musty, very sweet, a bit like jasmine, and this can follow you round the house. I've known it completely fill this room at times, also to be in one little spot and move from person to person. And even out in the grounds you get it too. You'll occasionally get this huge sudden burst of perfume, and then you'll know that Ailey's around. Very strange here, the smells. In fact, we get lots of paranormal smells. Some are very pleasant, some are absolutely revolting, and we never quite know what we're going to get next. I have been told by people who've lived in this house in the past or stayed here with relatives that there was this tradition among the owners. If this was your bedroom and you were ill, sometimes a little girl would come in the night and sit on the bed with you and sometimes hold your hand. It's really quite a nice story. We're all very fond of Ailey. She can be a bit mischievous though. She likes to untie shoelaces, and the children in the house in general like to let us know they're around, so many people get poked, tapped and prodded. We've had ponytails pulled, clothing tugged at, all kinds of things. If anybody, if you do feel something touching you, don't be too alarmed. There's really nothing nasty in the house. The children also play with the handles on furniture, among other things. These really do go up on their own at times, sometimes with a big clatter, sometimes completely soundlessly, and this happens all over the house too. Now, if you want to ask any questions as we go, please do. Anybody? Tudor as well. And this is called the dressing room. Though it would have been a bedroom in the early days with its own separate staircase like the others coming up just over there. These interconnecting doorways seem to have been knocked through at different times as the different bedroom staircases have been removed. So all the bedrooms lead straight through from one another. Now, I always find this a very quiet room. I've never seen anything in here, although I believe Civil War soldiers used to be seen in here some time back. It's been pretty quiet for some time now, really. The furniture in here is mainly Cromwellian, so we have the 2 carved oak dower chests, a gate leg table over there, and in the 4 corners some chairs dating from Charles I, so early 1600s. I don't know whether anyone's interested in these indentures on the walls. They are legal documents. This one, 1701, the Harper family sold the estate to the Vi family. Smell the smokes from downstairs. It's coming up through the floorboards. So this is called the Tudor bedroom, but for many years always known as the Lady Jane Grey room, because she's said to have slept in here. The chair on the right-hand side of the bed is said to have been her chair, but I think that's probably wishful thinking, though it is about the right age. I should say at this point, Lady Jane Grey does not haunt this house. We don't make any claim for that. Somebody said a couple of years ago they'd met her in the grounds, but I don't think so. I believe she haunts Bradgate Park and the Tower of London. Anyway, this was the most important bedroom. It was the first bedroom to be added, and in here we've got the original Tudor barrel ceiling, pendant chandelier to hang your lantern on, and on 2 sides the original Tudor plaster frieze. And this, behind the door, is where the little staircase, the little spooky staircase, comes up from the great hall. The bed in here is quite an imposing one. It's called a Tudor tester bed. The word tester is actually the roof on the bed, and there's a very good reason for the tester. Back in Tudor times, plaster ceilings were only for the very, very wealthy. Everybody else had thatch over their heads. Thatch contains vermin, rats, bats, all kinds of things. And vermin would, of course, drop into your rooms. That's why you have the tester. At least it stopped anything nasty falling into your bed. What a very good idea. In the middle of this particular tester, that diamond shape is a small safe. You could open that at bedtime, pop your valuables in, lock it up with the key, and anybody trying to rob you is going to wake you up climbing over you. The bed itself is all different styles, it's not all English, and some of it most certainly does come from shipwrecks. The bottom section of the back panel is believed to have come from the same Spanish Armada ship as some armour that we have. And the footboard is also Spanish, though very different in style. And here we have the devil on the bottom. I'm told the devil's there to keep away evil spirits, which is a very strange thing to believe, of course, but in Tudor times they believed some really weird things. They were afraid to sleep lying flat. They slept propped up on lots of pillows because they actually believed that if the devil saw you asleep flat, he'd think you were dead and whip your soul away. Another thing they did was to carve these holy symbols on the lintels over fireplaces. These are known as witch marks, and they're to stop evil spirits coming down the chimney. And you can also see a couple on the front door of the house, which is said to be the original front door. Anyone who knows this house knows of the cradle. The cradle has a real reputation, and some people say they find it a bit sinister. We think it has a feeling of sadness around it at times, probably for obvious reasons. There is one story of a 14-year-old girl's baby being taken from the room and drowned over at the silent pool by her father. A young girl has been seen looking very distressed. Now and again the figure of a woman seen standing at the head of the cradle, and sometimes a child seen in there, particularly by children, oddly enough. But what this cradle is really known for, of course, is rocking all on its own, and it can rock very violently indeed. Now this is where we tell the story. This is called The Legend of Chambercombe. It's based on documented fact, and it's the story of that thing that happened here a long time ago, and also of our most famous haunting. So if anybody wants to grab a chair at this point, please do. These chairs by the bed are fine to sit on. This one has a little reputation, but that one is very pleasant. If you want to sit on the bed, that's okay too. It belonged to one of our wreckers, Alexander Oak. Well, I'm just coming to that anyway, so yeah, I'll just mention that in a second. So when you're outside waiting for a tour, if you look up at the front wall of the house, you can see the remains of an old window frame. And this was spotted by a farmer called Janvi back in the year 1738. And he was very puzzled by it. He'd lived here for years. He knew there were 4 bedrooms along the front of the house, each with its own window, so why this separate window frame? After a bit of thought, he took some measurements upstairs and downstairs and found they were very different, and he realised there had to be a space missing here on this floor. So he went and got a pickaxe and hacked a hole in the wall over where the door is now, and he climbed through. To his surprise, he found himself in a small, dark, windowless chamber that nobody had known was there. In this chamber, a bed, and approaching the bed with his candle, he could see a skeleton in the bed, all curled up on its side and wearing what looked like the remains of a dress. Of course, this was a shock. It was also a mystery. Nobody knew who this woman was or how she got there. And to cut a long story short, after various consultations with the local church, the remains were buried in the grounds at the back of the house, and life, I suppose, went back to normal after a time. It wasn't till the mid-1800s the truth finally came out and the mystery was solved, and it turned out all of this had started off with the Oatway family. The Oatways were gentlemen farmers. Alexander Oatway was the owner of this chair, and he's said to have been a ruthless, violent man, very heavily involved in the wrecking business, as so many of the gentry were. We have seen men actually pushed out of this chair in the past, nothing so much recently. Anyway, the story is actually about Alexander's son, William, who lived in the house after his father's death. And William Oatway was married to Ellen Gregory. They were the parents of one grown-up daughter, a married woman called Kate. Kate lived over in Dublin with her wealthy sea captain husband, who was called Duncan Wallace. William Oatway was a wrecker like his father had been, and one night he'd been at a wrecking down at Heel Bay, the local wrecking beach, another haunted spot, and happened to be the last to leave. He was just taking a last look along the beach before coming home when he came across the body of a young woman lying there on the edge of the waves, in the most terrible state, with terrible injuries from all the constant battering against the rocks by the sea. She was half drowned, poor soul, but looking at her, William could see she was a wealthy woman, going by her clothing, her jewellery, and of course the big money pouch tied around her waist. Nobody knows quite why, but he actually brought her back here to this house. Maybe his intentions were good, we don't really know. We don't know what happened next either, but we do know that she ended up in a room, in that next room, in a bed in there, minus all her valuables. The window was bricked up, this doorway was plastered over, and that next room disappeared for a long time. A few days later, William was in town, happened to be in a tavern where he chanced to overhear part of a conversation that changed his life. Some people were talking about the latest shipwreck, and they were talking about the fact there had been a lady on board. Now that was very unusual back then because women were believed to be bad luck on board ship. But one person in the room knew more than the others. And he was telling them that actually this lady had been Captain Wallace's wife, and she'd been on board because she was on her way to visit relatives locally. And William began to realise at this point that this lady whose death he'd had a hand in and who he'd also robbed had been his own daughter Kate, who he and his wife hadn't seen for years and had just completely failed to recognise. According to the story, Kate's mother died shortly afterwards of a broken heart. That's what it says. We have no idea what that means. But soon after Ellen's death, William left Chambercombe, never to return. He is said to have mended his ways after all this. He lived to be an old man, and he died in 1733 in a house in the town of Foy, down in Cornwall. But it wasn't till the mid-1800s, the 1850s, during renovations, that an old metal box was found behind a fireplace containing William's written account of the events of that night. His confession, if you like. And the whole very long story was published in the Leisure Hour magazine in October 1865. So after all that time, it turned out the body in the hidden room, this is upsetting somebody obviously, the body in the hidden room was that of Kate Wallace, or Kate Oatway. Kate has always been the manor's most famous haunting. She's been seen by numerous people over the years, particularly on this floor of the house, and we used to hear her footsteps from downstairs very regularly, just walking up and down the whole length of this floor. But nobody's seen Kate or heard from her for I suppose 10, 15 years. It's quite a long time now. We don't know whether she's just having a break or whether she's gone. On the other hand, 10, 15 years is not a great deal of time in these terms. Both her parents, though, are still very regular visitors. Particularly her father, William Oatway, he turns up very regularly. And now and again her mother, Ellen, also. Ellen does come across as a terribly, terribly sad lady, and we wonder if it's Ellen who sometimes rocks this cradle in memory of her lost child. So that's the story knows. But as you know, all haunted houses get cold spots. We get a very regular one here. And sometimes you could be standing here and the whole corner suddenly turns icy cold. It really feels very unpleasant when it happens. And if you're sitting in this chair, you just feel this great wave of cold coming from your right. And another thing, the wig cupboard door opens on its own, but I've noticed over the years, never when anybody's in the room. It only happens when the room's empty. We think something quite nasty may well have happened here, but nobody actually knows what it was. It goes down. Sometimes it feels like a nice, cosy, friendly room. Other times it feels absolutely horrible, I have to say. And I've been here for years, but twice I have left this room in a hurry. Okay, so enough of that. For a few years this was known as the coat of arms room after this, and this was found by the Pincombe family, who were farmers here in the 1900s. The whole thing. It's all one thing really, isn't it?
It is. So this is the room that the lady was found in, and we've been told by Leslie, who's our guide, that the smell of rotting flesh sometimes emanates from here, and the sound of footsteps, and apparently it was possibly a nursery at one point because the sound of a baby crying emanates from here as well. So that's interesting.
And the atmosphere in here is completely different. Much quieter, much more peaceful, and you would think nothing ever happened in here, but now and again this room does turn very strange indeed, and I can feel quite unpleasant, but not very often. It's called the Victorian bedroom because of the furniture. The structure actually is Tudor, and we believe it was probably a storeroom for a very long time. In Victorian times, somebody knocked the doorway through here and turned it into a bedroom. We did believe this quilt to be Victorian for a long, long time. We've recently found out it was probably made in the 1930s in America, but the America bit does tie in with the story we have, so it's still that's still okay really. In here we sometimes get footsteps, the sound of footsteps passing through, the sound of a lady humming. A very old lady is sometimes seen over on that side of the room, all dressed in black. Now she has her own smell just like Ailey, but this is pretty unpleasant. She smells very strongly of stale wee, and sometimes she follows you around the house and brings the smell with her. If she likes you, she will actually make you smell the same, I'm told. Also, a little girl's been seen looking out from under the bed in the past. But mostly, as I say, it's a quiet room. Now, I said the furniture was Victorian, but over in the corner, this little chest is Georgian, and it's not quite what it seems to be. This is a bit of fun, really. So, a Georgian gentleman's commode, and in Georgian times, these were commonly found in dining rooms for the men to use in the evening after the ladies retired to the drawing room to drink tea. The men would stay on with the port and the brandy. If they were lucky, they had a commode. If not, chamber pots were always kept in the sideboard, and a chamber pot would be passed round the table as necessary. Over in the drawing room, the ladies had very similar facilities, and they would have a pot cupboard with chamber pots. But the ladies' chamber pots were a different shape, and they looked like large gravy boats. The name of this item was a Bourdaloue, and it was named after a French preacher called Louis Bourdaloue, whose sermons, we're told, were so wonderful, nobody wanted to miss a second. So ladies would actually take these covered Bourdaloue chamber pots into church with them, so they didn't have to miss any of the service if they were caught short. I was told by an antique dealer a while ago that sometimes people buy these things thinking they're actually large gravy boats. Some of them are very beautiful. And I'm told you occasionally see one gracing somebody's table full of gravy. Remember that next time you go out to dinner. Now the next room's the medieval kitchen, another very spooky part of the house. Do mind your heads on this very low ceiling. The doorway is even lower, and the trick is to stay ducked a little bit longer than you think you need. And you know, hygiene was not the buzzword, was it? So this is called the medieval kitchen, and this part of the house dates from the 1200s. Wow. These steps are more modern, they were put in the 1970s. Before that, the kitchen was somewhat bigger, and you can imagine this in the early days being a very, very busy place indeed. Lots of servants running to and fro, lots of activity. You can see the lime ash flooring here, it is in very poor shape indeed. It's had a very hard life. A lot of people don't like this kitchen. It can have quite an intimidating feel to it, and is not one of the more pleasant parts of the house in my opinion anyway. I've never particularly liked it, and we get all kinds of goings on in here. Now we have the original fireplace over here with various pots and kettles dating from the 1700s. Their names are things like Lazy Jane and Idle Jack. They're supposed to be labour saving. Two ancient bread ovens, one on each side. Sometimes a little boy is seen sitting on the ledge on the right-hand side of the fireplace. He's known as Peter, though I don't think we actually know his name. He's always been known as Peter. One of a series of little boys who would have been employed in the early days to look after the fireplace area. Sweep the chimney, stoke the fire, turn the spit, all those kinds of jobs. Now these poor kids had terrible lives really, up there breathing smoke all day. A lot of them didn't last very long. Now and again, Peter's also seen climbing down from there. Other children are seen here in the kitchen. Sometimes one of the pots will just suddenly randomly start swinging, or the spit will start turning on its own. The handles go up on the dresser just like they do upstairs, and a rather unpleasant man sometimes hangs around on the upper level and stops people going into the Victorian bedroom. It's always very, very cold in here, and the house in general is very, very cold in the winter. We often find it's warmer outside than in during the cold part of the year. Up here, on this level, is where the servants would sleep in the kitchen floor, and the women and the children would climb a ladder from the kitchen to come up here to bed, where they'd probably have slept in straw in the early days. We do know they also bred pigeons up there for the kitchen pot. Imagine how revolting that must have been, especially in the hot weather. But in the winter, with the kitchen fire going all the time, this would have been the only warm place in the house, so maybe it wasn't quite that bad. The next room that we're coming to is the chapel, and I'll just point out the original Tudor doorway there and a hole in the door. Now and again somebody asks, is that a cat flap? No, it's not. It was for the servants in the very early days. There was a time when everybody had to attend church service, religious services, because it was actually the law, and that included the servants. Now, a lot of families wouldn't want the grubby old servants in their chapel with them, and so when the mass was being said in there, the door would be closed, the servants would kneel on the floor this side, they could listen to what was going on, and they'd take communion through the hole in the door. I bet they look forward to that already. What fun. So, yes, that life has changed a great deal for all of us. Who would want to be a servant in the early days? I really don't know. Now, the chapel is very, very tiny. I don't know whether it'll all squeeze in there. I'm just wondering whether to take you in all at once or do it in two. Shall we do it in two halves? Anyone want to stay in here and take some photos for a couple of minutes?
We've done steak and kidney, yeah.
Might just be the wood.
And this is the private chapel of Chambercombe family. It was registered in the year 1439, though probably it was here before that. And it's never been deconsecrated, so it is still a chapel, though not in use as such these days, of course. It's very tiny. It only measures about 5.5 feet by 11.5, but it was built to fill in the gap between the original house and the medieval kitchen when the house was still only those two rooms. In here we've got an original flagstone floor, and as you'd expect in a 15th century chapel, we have some people under the floor. 2 adults and 5 children. We know this because of a geophys survey that was done some years ago. I think this is probably the nicest room in the house. It's always very peaceful in here, even though occasionally a monk has been seen passing through and a lady has been seen kneeling this end. People always feel quite at home in here. It's got a lovely calm feeling to it. The box this end is the oldest piece in the house, a Peter's pence box dating from the 1200s. These were made for churches to collect a tax called Peter's pence that property owners paid towards the upkeep of the Pope, and it was 1 silver penny a year. Coins went in the hole in the end, collected inside, and once a year all the money went off to Rome from York. It's a very simple box. Some of them are very fancy indeed, but you can see the hinges have been changed over and over again. This has been looked after. You can see the shadow of a much more original lock on the lid there, and there's a little compartment, a hidden compartment in one end, probably so the priest could do a little bit of one for him, one for me. I'm sure that went on a lot.
So what we have here, guys, we have a hidden staircase. Apparently the older steps, the stone steps, are below, they believe, some of these wooden steps that have been put in later. But this is renowned for poltergeist activity, this actual little staircase here. So there you go.
Probably Jane and... I know some people just call it being disrespectful to spirit. My son fell foul of a woman one day. He used to work here as a guide for a short time.
Right.
And all the handles were up on the dresser in the Chippendale room, and he said, oh, the handles, I wonder if it's the ghost or whether it's one of my colleagues. And somebody actually reported him to management for disrespecting the spirit.
Yes. Yes, I know. We do seem to attract quite a few strange individuals in this field of ours, unfortunately.
Yes. And it's getting a bit overpopular, I think, too.
It's becoming too popular to the point where I say it's like it's kind of the builder. It's almost like you go on eBay, you buy yourself a trowel, you buy yourself a cement mix, and all of a sudden you're a professional builder.
Yeah.
And that's what it is with the paranormal.
Everyone's a medium these days.
Everybody's a medium. All and sundry are mediums, and of course I've not got good history with mediums because I've questioned them quite thoroughly, and I've said that over all the years that I've been doing it, I've probably only met 2 people that have stumped me. That doesn't mean that they've been speaking to the dead. It just means that I haven't got an answer as to how they've done it or how they can do it. So, hi guys, and welcome to Dan's Haunted Cottage. As I said earlier, I'm in Chambercombe Manor today in Devon, and I'm with a lovely lady called Leslie, and she is the tour guide for Chambercombe Manor, one of the tour guides. And she's great because she does what I really love about the paranormal, she mixes the history with it. And if you know me, and I'm sure some of you do, then you'll know that I'm a big history buff, and I think that the two go hand in glove. Without one, you can't really appreciate the other. That's my brand new feelings anyway. So I'd just like to ask you, Leslie, if that's okay, what are some of your experiences here at Chambercombe Manor?
Oh, good grief.
If I put you on the spot now.
No, I've seen a few things. A black shape walked past me one day, which did make me jump, I must admit. I've heard voices, all kinds of things. Off the top of my head, I've seen moving lights from time to time. I don't tend to see ghosts as such, or not very often, but I've been poked and prodded. Oh, good Lord. It's hard. It's actually hard to think now because everybody who works here has had so many experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even the skeptics. Even my son was a complete skeptic, and after a few weeks he said, okay, I admit it, there's something there. Because they really did play him up. And you get locked in the chapel sometimes. This door will lock itself on this side and you can't get out. Just the various things that go on in the house.
Okay,
really.
excellent. And the thing I like about Leslie is she seems to be very sceptical of everything as well, and she questions it, which is exactly what you should do as a paranormal investigator. As I've said before, you can't run away with everything's paranormal because, 99.99% of the time it's not, but it's just that 1% that we look for. And what I like about Leslie is that she's very much like me in that sense. She seems to, well, she's doing it properly, and that's what matters. So, Leslie, thank you ever so much for your time. I won't keep you because Leslie's due on a break. So thank you very, very much, Leslie. I really appreciate that. Lovely to meet you.
Yes.
And I'll speak to you guys later. Hope you enjoyed the tour, wonderful tour that Leslie gave around the building. It's a stunning building. If you get the opportunity, please come here and visit it. They need lots and lots of cash to go for their register to keep them going. It's very important that you guys do that. And we don't want to lose another piece of our wonderful history. So please, come along here, get on a YouTube, get onto Facebook, get on any kind of website or any kind of site you can, and sort of do some sort of contribution or help towards Chambercombe Manor because it's one beautiful historical building. Speak to you later, guys. Thank you. So a big thank you to Leslie and a big thank you to Chambercombe Manor here in Ilfracombe. It truly is a spectacular and wonderful and beautiful and historical building. What more could anybody ask for? Oh yeah, and it's haunted. Perfect.